Thanks everyone for being here and supporting the watershed and Kennedy Gardens, and thanks for your interest in learning about how we can protect our water through gardening. So my name is Brian, and I'm the educator with the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. And you're probably here, so you're probably familiar with, or you are here, so you're probably familiar with the watershed. But we are a local grassroots nonprofit. Actually, I think Bungalow. Okay, so they are soup and sandwich. Thank you. Soup and sandwiches out front with Bungalow Catering. So if you guys are hungry, I believe they are out front there. And so a good local business. So Bungalow Catering, go check them out. All right. So the watershed, we've been around. We are on our 53rd anniversary. 1970 is when we were formed, and it's a little hard to see. Yeah, there's a little bit of glare. You guys can. I mean, I don't really know how to. We'll take it as we go. So in the 70s, the North River, the only scenic protected river in the state, which is why if you're paddling on the North River, it's so beautiful for so large sections of it where you can't even see houses in some areas. So that in comparison with the South River, which doesn't have some of the same protections, you can see the difference between how some of these early protective orders were able to really sustain and help protect what is really important. It's the beautiful river. 1980s stop discharge from wastewater treatment facilities. I'm not going to name which ones. And 606 acres of shellfish beds in the 1990s protected. Community preservation acts were always in support, working with towns to support protecting local lands to preserve native wildlife habitat or areas to help protect our water, which is what I'll talk about in a moment. And then, of course, today we educate nearly 20,000 youth through our Water Smart program, through our summer camp operations, and we work with the 12 South Shore area towns to help them preserve their lands and protect their water through our Water Smart program, which is a municipal stormwater mitigation program, part of the EPA. So towns will take part in this program when we provide education with that as well. So I'll keep, so there's a lot of big figures here. Our reach is all the way from Hull all the way down to Plymouth, and the watershed area is just in here around the North-South River. So what is a watershed? Anyone like to share what a watershed is? What is a watershed?
Isn't it the underground water for a certain area?
That's part of it. All the water in an area is all part of the watershed, including surface water and groundwater. It's all part of it. So a watershed is a big area of land where all of the water that enters that area eventually flows to one place. So watersheds are not defined by town boundaries, but they're defined by topography. It's the hills and the valleys, because of course water always goes downhill. So depending on where you live in a town, where you are can dictate what watershed you live in. So for example, guess what watershed we are in right now? We're in the North River watershed, because when it rains in this area, all that water is going to eventually go into the North River. Watersheds are typically named after the place, the river that they go into. So here, we're part of the North River watershed, and so it's all hills and valleys. So we've got over 10,000 subscribers. We've got over 2,000 members now, and so a lot of big figures here. We're all over the place. If you're not a follower or not a member, maybe you want to become a member. So. It's all good stuff. All right, we are in 11 the South Shore area towns. Actually, we can add, Cohasset's in here. We can add Kingston to this too. Duxbury, Hanover, Hingham, Hull, Cohasset, Marshfield, Norwell, Pembroke, Scituate, Weymouth, and Rockland are all the towns that we do programs in. So, all right. Our big thing is preserving and protecting one of our most valuable natural resources, and that's water. Raise your hand if you've ever used water before. Yeah, pretty important. So everything that we do is all about trying to preserve and protect that, but not just for people, for plants and animals as well, because we all need it. And this preserving it for today, we've preserved it for yesterday, and so we can preserve it for the future. All right, a lot of stuff we do here: water education, horseshoe crab surveys. There's the Water Smart program in action. We do eelgrass surveys out in the Duxbury, Kingston, Plymouth Bay area. And so we're a partner with a Mass Bays, a National Estuary Partnership, which is a state agency that works to preserve coastal habitat, marine estuary research and programs. So we are a partner with them as well. Salt marsh loss, water quality monitoring. These are all things that you can volunteer and help us out with. And actually this summer we're going to be doing the eelgrass, and we always have a shortage of boats. We need like 16 to 18 foot like flat bottom or whalers to go out and study the eelgrass out in the Kingston, Duxbury, Plymouth Bay area. If there's anyone that has a boat that they are willing for us to put a lot of scientific equipment on it for a day and do some snorkeling on the eelgrass, like please let us know, email us, because we're always looking for boat captains to help take us out. All right. We do a lot of youth programs over the summertime, fall programs, summer programs, kayaking programs. What's up this one? Estuary, we'll go out to like the Spit or the mud flats or the tide pools. That's out in between. The Spit's over here and Fourth Cliff is over here, except that during low tide, this is tide pools that we go. We'll take groups out there. A lot of grant-funded programs as well. All right. The big one, though, is dam removals, protecting our habitat, removing these old barriers. So here in the South Shore, here in Massachusetts, here in New England, there's a lot of rivers that have been dammed up in the past because they needed that infrastructure. They needed those to dam the rivers for jobs, for work, for energy, for grinding, grist, for turning water wheels, for work. To sustain themselves. So back, from the 1600s all the way through the 1800s, using the power of the water was a very lucrative and a great way to prosper in the area. So back then, the dams were 100% necessary. They were needed for the industry. However, here today, a lot of our rivers are still dammed with relics of the factories, or of the mills, of the forges, of the foundries. Hence the name of a lot of our ponds. Mill pond, foundry pond, forge pond, are relics of the past. They're old, they're artifacts that don't really serve a purpose anymore. The mills, the factories, the forges are long gone. So a lot of the dams are no longer necessary, and some cases are even dangerous because they could give way, they're no longer maintained. They're on a lot of private property. Sometimes the people don't even know they own the dam, and if the dam breaks, it could be an issue they could be liable. There's a whole lot of things, but a big reason from the environmental standpoint is that these dams disrupt the natural flow of our river systems. And so they are a boundary or a barrier for a lot of these species, a lot of the energy that needs to flow up and down these rivers, not just for the water quality, but for things like river herring, a keystone species here in New England that we need to preserve and protect, because a keystone species, of course, is a species that so many other animals are dependent on for their food. And our rivers around here, that's why this area is so special, is because we have estuaries. So what is the difference between a river and an estuary? Anyone? This goes back to, I don't know, 5th grade, I think. Yeah, so an estuary is a river that meets the sea. So it is a river that connects with the sea. It's where freshwater and saltwater meet. It's where the upland forested habitat meets the coastal marine habitat. So river herring live in both of those habitats. And now here we're getting into spring. It sure feels like spring in here. Now that we're getting closer to spring, we are going to start to have our herring migrations coming up the North River, going up into 1st, 2nd, 3rd Herring Brook, going up into Herring River, into all of our South Shore area towns. And so not only are the river herring a major food source out in the ocean, but they are also a major food and energy source here in our upland areas as well, yes.
So is the estuary part of the river, like the North River does go into the ocean?
Yes, so the North River is considered an estuary, the entire North River. Things like 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Herring Brook, probably not, but the main stem of the North River is considered an estuary.
So Brian, is that water like brackish?
It is brackish water in a lot of parts of it, yes. So depending on when the tide or what the tide is doing, or depending where you are in the North River, and that's what makes the North River so incredible, and the South River too, is that depending where you are, you're gonna go through several completely different habitats. So you're gonna go, I'm supposed to talk about gardening, you guys. You're gonna go from a marine saltwater, very, very salty, we'll take kids out there and do water sampling, salinity monitoring and stuff like that. You'll go from an incredibly salt-rich environment. just within a few miles go through brackish, where you start to see a transition between not only the marine life, but also things like the type of grasses that are growing along the sides of the bank. You go from a lot of Spartina alterniflora, which is our salt marsh grass, salt hay, cordgrass, and Spartina patens, and then you start to go into a cattail, narrow and broadleaf cattail habitat where it gets more fresh. And then pretty soon, when you're up in Hanover, like near Ludham's Ford, where it's the head of Tide Dam, where the tide literally works its way all the way up about 14 miles upstream, then it's totally fresh, and you've got all of your freshwater aquatic species. So, but the thing is about it's so cool because you can be all the way up in Hanover, you're miles and miles away from the coast, but yet the tide still goes up and down, but the tide isn't salty anymore. It's all fresh because of the salt water sinks underneath the freshwater. Heavier, denser salt water sinks underneath the freshwater, pushes it up. So you can still see the tide go up and down in Hanover and Pembroke, but the salt has long since dropped out. So, and then you've got freshwater tidal marshes. There's only 5 in the state, and there's one here on the North River. So it's cool. It's cool. If you ever have a chance to go kayaking and explore the North or the South River, do it, all right? Contact us. We provide trips too. All right. All right. So removing a lot of these old dams, these defunct dams that no longer serve a purpose. This is really big, and restoring our free-flowing stream. So yeah, I kind of just lumped this. It's really hard to see, but these are the herring. They're considered They're considered, and well, they want to be camouflaged actually, so maybe they don't want to be seen. They're called anadromous fish. So anadromy is the process of an organism that spends most of its time, spends about 90% of its life out in the ocean, feeding, eating, and then it will swim up into our freshwater streams and tributaries to then spawn. Why would a fish want to leave the bountiful food quantities and food sources of the ocean and go up into our tiny little streams and tributaries here? Why do you think they would want to do that? It's to safety to lay eggs, absolutely. Because if they lay those eggs out in the middle of the ocean, they're going to get eaten by 1,000 different things. Whereas when they swim up here, they can lay them in our little freshwater brooks and streams. It's pretty surprising how far they can work their way up, as long as there aren't dams in the way. And yes, there are fish ladders. A lot of towns have done a lot of good work to provide fish ladders, which is a helpful way to help them pass. But fish ladders are kind of like a nice try. They really have to. They really need the free flowing stream is really what's important. So notoriously, the river herring, they are attracted to the most churning of water, and a lot of times the fish ladders aren't where the most churning is. It's usually where the dam spillway is, where they can't. Herring aren't like the salmon where they're jumping over right into the grizzly bear's mouth. They don't do that. They can't even jump really. They can kind of get a little boost of speed, but they need that laminar column of water. They need a solid like run of water to work their way up. They can go upstream through a pretty strong current, but they can't like jump and breach and all that. So they try. They kind of flip around a little bit. Sometimes they'll flop onto a bank, and then they gotta. So they need all the help that they can get, and that's definitely one thing we're definitely here to help them and to try to preserve and protect them. All right. We'll do a program called Fish School, which is gearing up now. It stands for Fostering Innovative Science Through Herring Counts in School. We've got an underwater camera. Plymouth County has an underwater camera on one of our active herring runs that we'll tap into, and then the students can, from their classroom, go online and watch live stream of the herring working their way up and count and perform citizen science. So in the springtime, our science department does need volunteers to do herring counts, to go to a lot of our local streams and spend 10 minutes to do a herring count. And then we use that, the EPA, the Division of Marine Fisheries, the state, NOAA uses that data to try to track and learn more, because still there's a lot of unknowns about the herring. So with the kids, I'll run a herring simulator where it's an obstacle course and they have to jump through and all stuff. So, all right, water withdrawals is a big one. So this is where guarding can really play a major role in our relationship with water and how we can help our habitat here. So Scituate Reservoir here just a couple years ago was like bone dry, happens in the summertime. Third Herring Brook right here, where the water level ruler is just completely dry. So notoriously, July, August, September, a lot of our water can get very dry. If you go, up on the 3A and go past the reservoir, sometimes in the summertime, you'll see it's like startlingly low, and that's the water that we need. And so, where does a lot of this water go? Like, how come in the summertime our water resources start to the demand really increases? What's going on there? Watering the lawns is the one. Yep. Yeah, yeah, golf courses, yeah. So we won't get started on the whole lawn situation, but there are lots of alternatives to think about. But watering the lawns with automated sprinklers is incredibly, incredibly wasteful. All right. Basically what's going on here is, I know of course it got sunny, so it's like kind of hard to see, but of course all the wells, the town's wells for municipal water, the personal private wells that we have at our home are all just straws that go down to tap into our groundwater resource. Our aquifer is our groundwater. It's where most of our water comes from. Most of the towns around here get a certain percentage of their surface water and some of their from groundwater. So but it's all connected. So if we have low groundwater, if the recharge isn't happening enough, if the rain isn't going in and saturating our groundwater and replenishing our aquifers, our surface water goes down. So it's all connected. So that, with that being said, if we have polluted surface water, we also have polluted groundwater, and vice versa. So it's all the water's connected. No matter where it is, it's all part of the same droplet pretty much, and so it's all important. And if we take water from one place, it affects other places as well.
Brian, excuse me, is aquifer, does that just mean underground water?
It's groundwater, yep, and aquifers. So usually aquifers are just large habitats of water underneath us, and it's not like big like caverns. I mean, there may be, that'd be really cool, but it's just usually just saturated in all of the sand and the gravel. There could be layers of bedrock or clay that can separate aquifers. So those, like, if we heard of like artesian wells, those are like really, really deep wells that they drill way down to get that sort of confined water that may be trapped in a sort of a rocky area or a clay area. So artesian wells. So it's usually like ancient water. It's very, very old. Yeah.
So when people have a well water sign, they're taking water from the same aquifer.
It's all.
The only benefit is that it's not getting treated, so you miss that part of effort. But otherwise,
That's correct. That's correct. It's just another straw. Yeah, it's just another, just like the towns. Yeah.
Hi. We had a watershed group, my wife and I,
Yeah.
that worked with North and South River.
Yeah.
And East of Situate. And we had a hydrogeologist involved with us, and it was interesting because he said wetlands that are associated with surface water bodies that you drink from are called outstanding resource waters.
Yeah.
So he said you should consider the wetlands as actually being like a water body.
Yeah.
And North and South Rivers is considered an outstanding resource water.
Is it? Yeah. That's really, I'd like to actually hear a little bit more about that. The wetlands are so incredibly important, and that you bring up a great point. Our wetlands are basically groundwater that you can start to see, or they are also areas that filter our water. So preserving wetlands, that's why the Wetland Protection Act, that's why you can't bulldoze a vernal pool or a marsh anymore to build housing or development, is because that's where we need our water to go. So in urbanized areas or areas that have lots of development, we have lots of impervious surfaces. So areas where water can't sink in to the ground, but instead runs off across the surface. And I'm jumping ahead in slides here. I know this is coming up at some point. So when we have water that is not being able to go into the earth and start to filter itself naturally, we have water that's running across the surface. And here in the South Shore, the #1 cause of water pollution is from stormwater runoff. So it's water that runs off across the roads, parking lots, roofs, impervious surfaces, and carries all that stuff with it. So I'm supposed to start talking more about gardening coming up. When we have lots of fertilizers and pesticides, when it rains, a lot of that is getting swept into our water. And if anyone here has ever tried to go swimming at a local pond or a lake that has a sign that says no swimming, this water has blue-green algae or a toxic algal bloom, a lot of that time it's because of all that fertilizer and pesticides that we're putting on our lawn. Lawns are not considered pervious surfaces. They are considered impervious because how hard packed the lawns are and how it's only just a single type of grass that's hard packed and mowed and manicured just right. Water has a tendency to run across the top of our lawns rather than sink in to where we really need it to go. And of course, when we have that stormwater running across our lawns, it's going to take all that stuff that we put on it with it into our nearest water body. So, all right. So, yes.
But speaking of impervious surfaces, I wonder how many people in this really small audience know that the MBTA has pretty much forced Situate to build and build and build
Yeah.
in Greenbush, and
Yeah.
that's what all those condos are, because we are a MBTA community.
Yeah.
Stations.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't fight City Hall that way.
That's really hard.
And then the Massachusetts legislature, I mean, the whole thing is about the carrot and stick thing, because they will withhold, if Situate does not comply,
Yeah.
they
They
won't
won't.
no access to funding.
Yeah, and I'm not in the legal side. Our director Samantha, who I think just arrived, she'll know more about all that. But it's a nonstop battle between things that we may need, affordable housing, but then being able to bypass certain wetland regulations to be able to. It can be very frustrating. I certainly know that for sure. Yeah. So that's a whole other thing, and so I try not to. I'm just doing like the happy education stuff. When it comes to the legals, it's like it can be very, very frustrating. So, but we definitely have board members and people who are involved in litigation and stuff on our board, and community members who are strongly in favor of learning more and preventing some of this. So being a member is one way to certainly. Thank you. Thank you for your support, because I mean, several years ago when they even started, trying to put the train depot just right over here. I mean, that would have been just an absolute nightmare. All right. So in the summertime, obviously, I just talked. In the summertime, our water usage surges. Yes, South Shore areas, the population does increase because of tourism, things like that. But this is staggering. This would go way more than any uptick in population in the area for summer residents and things like that. So irrigation restrictions have helped, like the do not water signs, or only water on certain days. That helps a little bit. That certainly does. It makes a difference. And just raising awareness is a great way to start. So, but there's still more that can be done. Again, third Herring Brook. Yep, more just dry photos. We'll send interns out to take pictures of this in the summer. This is in the summer and like late summer, early fall. The herring, the juvenile herring, are trying to outmigrate. So they've been in our local ponds and streams feeding and getting big all summer long. And this is when they're trying to leave and get back out to the ocean. So a lot of times they get stuck in our ponds or the puddles at that point, and they can't get out. So that certainly doesn't help with the herring population. Again, when we see herring return, so when we remove a dam, like Third Herring Brook between Norwell and Hanover, we removed 3 dams in the past 15 years. So now it's free flowing all the way from the ocean all the way up until Jacobs Pond, which wouldn't really provide much more habitat anyway. And the dam's actually under the state highway, so that we're going to put a fish ladder in there. But when we see areas that herring have been able to return to, we'll see increases in other populations like otters, like osprey, and like bald eagles. And so, as well as macroinvertebrates, as well as different types of marine aquatic flora along the edges, because of the fish eggs are actually fertilizing some of our native aquatic plant life. It's just all connected. So the herring are pretty darn important. And it's not just the herring. It's also our eastern native brook trout when we have such low water. So, all right, this presentation is getting very doom and gloom here. Lawns, yes, we all know. So there's a lot of figures here about lawns. Summer watering, 65% of the total yearly water consumption. The majority of it just happens in those summer months. Largest crop grown in the U.S. is lawn grass, which it could be other things, more beneficial things. So over the last 20 years, the cost of maintaining non-native lawn grasses could exceed costs of maintaining a meadow or wetland by 670%. So supporting just like the last presentation, supporting our native flora is incredibly important. And there's many ways to do that, but getting rid of a lawn is really just a great start, and replacing it with anything that is a little bit more beneficial. Most of our grass is not a native species, and it really has. So that one of the big reasons why native versus non-native is so important is because non-native things really serve no benefit to the area. Our bees, our pollinators, our birds, our wildlife really aren't used to things like Phragmites. They don't really know what to do with it. So whereas our native cordgrass grasses and native cattails. Our birds, our saltmarsh sparrows, our marsh wrens, they know how to use that stuff. So they've been adapted to it. So it provides habitat and all these things. So non-native species is more than just not something that belongs. It's actually something that really doesn't provide any benefit to the habitat or to the community. All right. It's kind of hard to see. So I already talked about impervious surfaces, maintenance, and of course high amounts of chemical fertilizers. And so all that ends up into our water.
Mike just died.
Oh, it did? Okay. No worries. I'm going to keep talking though. I'll talk louder at the camera. All right. So we, of course, want to promote a richer, more diverse type of habitat in our gardens. Richer vegetation, native trees, native plants, things like that. Obviously, if you have a Norway maple in your garden, don't cut it down, all right? But maybe if you're looking to purchase something here or in the future, you want to consider our native species would be most important. So, and I will talk about why that is and hooks and things that we can do. We worked with Harbor Media, so it's the first time you guys have ever had any technical issues. This is a great group. Actually our fish school program, during the pandemic, we made virtual versions of it all, and it all went through Harbor Media. They do such a fantastic job. So Nora Well and Harbor Media, you guys. If anyone's looking for any type of production or filming, they are the place to go, a local crew. So it's all good stuff. It's more than just a lawn, it's more than just a yard. You've got a little micro habitat there, lots of stuff going on. Fungi, bacteria, nematodes, arthropods, birds. It's part of course, that whole thing that we learned on school, that food web. And so we can really be better for the environment by supporting a lot of things that we don't even really think about. Putting fertilizers and things will limit really what's happening there. So all this stuff is available on our website. So I know I'm kind of going through because I'm talking way too long. So all this stuff you can get on our website. So, the Gardening Green, the Greenscapes program, it's all there. So organic fertilizers, kelp and fish meal. Don't go to the beach though and grab all the rack line stuff. There are places that you can go to get it. Compost. Does anyone here compost at home? Oh, awesome, that's great. I mean, it's amazing how much of that waste, household, waste that normally go and pile up in a landfill can actually, all that space that we're saving, that can actually become really good fertile soil that we can use in our garden. So you get all the vermicultures going on in there too, and all that good biological process of breaking things down is good. When waste, organic waste goes into a landfill, for example, like a banana peel, if a banana peel were in a compost scenario, it turns into soil and we can reuse it. When a banana peel is in a landfill, it sits in and amongst all that plastic and rubber and all that other stuff. It can't break down. So we've got lots of what would be considered biodegradable organic waste taking up space in our landfill, and that stuff won't break down because there's not this bacteria. It's hard to think that there's not bacteria in a landfill, but no, it's all that plastic stuff that keeps all this biological process from happening. So anytime we can keep free up space in a landfill is good. So composting is a great way. Plus you get such good soil to use in your gardens. So mowing, obviously, lawns still have a purpose. Some towns actually need you to have a nice cut lawn, and providing place to play, although there are alternatives to do it. But if you do have to have a lawn, a sharp blade, all right? Mow no more than 1/3 at a time. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Mulch clippings, it's good. You can, that thatch that you can use to help fertilize. So keep grass about 3 inches tall, so 1/3. So you don't want to cut it down more than 1/3 of the height of the grass. So a good rule of thumb keep it about 3 inches tall is a credit card. So standing on end, a credit card, that's at about a healthy length that you want it. It does allow some more habitat for some of our insect species and things like that. And taller grass, it will outcompete other things like crabgrass and other things that we may not want in there. And so the taller that you have the grass, the less you'll have to mow it. And it will kind of help itself out and manicure itself, so you don't have to put like pesticides or herbicides on it. So, but of course, if you have to have a lawn, these are good practices to help sort of do it in a little bit more of an environmentally friendly way. So, but keep that blade nice and sharp. And if you cut more than half the actual total length of the grass, it'll most likely hurt it or injure it or kill it. So, all right. Irrigation does not replenish groundwater. Like I said, most of the water will run off the surface of our lawns. 80% of water applied by irrigation systems is lost to evapotranspiration or runoff. So when we're watering on a hot summer day, most of that water is going to go up into the sky or run off across the surface into our driveway or into the road and into our storm drains, which then goes right to our nearest water body. And so most of it, only about 20% actually sinks back into the earth. So it's not really replenishing anything, and those irrigation systems can really eat up a lot of water. All right, did you know watering 1 inch of water on a 1 acre yard consumes 26,000 gallons of water, or more than a standard 16 by 32 swimming pool, Olympic-sized swimming pool. So it adds up very, very, very quickly. So yeah, that's a lot. So should be jumping over to native species. All right, it'll take a moment. So what are some things that we can do to help this and help our need for watering or getting rid of our lawns? And so hang tight as we figure out what's next. There's always something. All right. Do the, from Kurt's slide. Okay, cool. All right. Do the walk test. So before watering, check. If there are no footprints, then no need for water. No water is needed. If you can see where you were standing after you step on the grass and leave, then yeah, you may want to water. So, but we certainly don't need to be watering every day. And certainly the timing of watering is good too. So not only do people need water, not only do plants and animals need water, but public safety needs water too. Those fire hydrants, those are filled up by the water supply. So if we have our town wells that are starting to get critically low and run dry, then we don't have water for our critical public safety and infrastructure like our fire hydrants and fire fighting gear. So we did a water saving campaign 2 years ago, and we had the superintendent of the Weir River water systems, as well as the fire chief, I think of Norwell, do a talk about why saving water is important for more than just the environment. So, all right. Rain gardens. Does anyone here have a rain garden? Okay, sort of.
We built one at the school where I teach.
Oh, can I ask what school?
Harvard Middle School.
Oh, really? That's cool. Ooh. Was it part of like a community, like did the kids help?
Yeah, the kids designed, like one class designed it, one class built it.
That's really cool. We did something like that for Hanover a little bit, but we're trying to get back into that. So that's really neat. I'd like to actually hear a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Our group worked with the Riverways program.
Riverways. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think it exists anymore in that name, but they built a couple of rain gardens.
Really? Yeah.
One by the high school, one off of Road,
Yeah.
side street.
That's great. See, I love hearing about stuff like that because yes, we can all make a little one in our yard, which is incredibly helpful. But when there are ones put in at the community areas, like at the school or town halls, it helps just raise awareness to show how easy it is, how we could all do it. So things like that, especially with students helping, that's a big win-win. Really, all a rain garden is just providing an area of your yard to capture water and put it back into the ground. That's all it is. So you can plant really whatever in there. Native species will do the best because native species don't need watering. Once they get established, our local Joe pieweed, echinacea coneflower, milkweed, things like that, are used to growing in our climate. So they can go for periods of drought. They can go for, Joe Pye may be the exception because it needs some wetland loving kind of plant. And so, but all of our local species are used to growing. So once they get established, you don't need to water them and spend all the time watering it because they're used to our climate. For now, at least. All right. But really, depression, if you have an area of your yard where water is notoriously pooling up, that's not a wetland, but an area of lawn or mulch, or where you can see when it rains, all that water is starting to pool up there, maybe that's a spot for a rain garden. So to capture that area and capture that water in an area and allow that water to soak in. Earth is our best natural filter. So yes, the towns have ways to filter our water to make it safe to drink, but we want to make sure that they have to do as little work as possible. So we want to make sure that water gets into the ground and starts to filter. So the earth, when that water soaks through all that sand, all that soil, all that gravel, all that rock, it filters itself out. We do it in our Water Smart School program. The kids will build a filter and then take really dirty looking water and put it through and watch it get filtered even with just a couple inches of rock and sand. So imagine hundreds of feet of earth. It can really clean our water very well for us. It can't filter out everything, but so any chance that we can get to return water into the ground is good, is really, really good. So again, this is all on our website. 1 part sand, 1 part topsoil, 1 part compost works very well. There's variations of a mixture that you can do. And then an optional layer of gravel. You can do a percolation test, which is really fun with the family, is to go to an area that you are thinking about putting a rain garden in and pour water on the surface and see how long it takes that water to soak in. And if it soaks in very quickly, then you might not need a layer of gravel, and you might not to be as careful with your topsoil mulch sand mixture. But if the water sits there for hours and hours, then yes, you may want to dig a little bit deeper and sort of churn that stuff up and mix it up a good bit. And so usually 2 feet, 2.5 feet is a lot. That's pretty deep. That's sort of at the higher end. Sometimes you don't even need to go that far down. Yeah.
I live in an area by woods where there are a lot of termites, so I don't mulch because I don't want to keep my ground damp.
Yeah. There's a lot, you said a lot of forest area where there's a lot of
Termites.
Oh, termite. Yeah. 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 And so, if you're surrounded by woods and the water is naturally flowing into the woods are the best. Woods, wetlands, and prairies and meadows are the best for filtering water. So you might not, if the water is going into the woods anyway, it's going to go down. So that, depending on where, you might not. If on the front of your house where like roof or driveway runoff is going in the other direction towards the road, that might be the spot that you want to go. Typically speaking, and I think it's going to say in here, you want to be away from the house for foundation purposes and flooding and basement, things like that. And so not being right up next to the house, but if you're concerned about termites, especially on the wood side, the forest will sort of, that'll sort of take care of itself. So that's a good question. I always have a hard time with questions like that because it's very site specific, and everyone has a different configuration, but certainly termites, a native species. There's actually only 1 species of termites in all of New England. I can't remember the name of it. Did anyone hear Blake Dinius's talk, by the way, a few days ago? He's a local entomologist. He's, incredibly wealth of information. He actually would be the one Plymouth County Extension. Blake Dinius, you can call him up. He's always happy to answer. He gave a virtual talk for this, I think on Wednesday. And so he knows a lot about termites. So all right. Like what to worry about, what not to worry about, things like that. How to keep them, keep them where they belong. Still keep them, but not let them into our wood floors and things like that. All right. Rain barrels. There's a rain barrel sale this week. Or I think we'll talk to Lori. I think you can register to get one. There's one by the booth over there. Capturing water coming off our roofs is great. Normally that water would then go into our lawns and who knows where it might go. But you can, instead of using hose spigot to water our lawns or water our gardens, you can capture that roof runoff into a rain barrel, which were food grade, because I think the rain barrels that we get from the Great American Rain Barrel Company, I think they were all either olive oil barrels or industrial sized pickle barrels. So they're it's food grade. So if you're worried about putting that water onto your plants, onto your like herbs or your edible garden or your tomato plants, it's safe. There won't be any leaching from the plastic of the rain barrel, and it's repurposed. It's reusing a big plastic thing anyway. So yeah.
I worry about what it's picking up on the asphalt shingles.
Asphalt shingle, and I've been asked that before. Is it so? A lot of times, the ones that you can buy have a mesh layer over the top. I don't know how the shingles that I'm thinking of, it's like a pretty porous grit. The screens that these come with may be able to help keep those out, but if not, you can get finer like screen mesh, almost like the landscape fabric. Like it's like almost like not even see-through, that we can put in our gardens to keep the weeds from coming up, but it still allows the water to go through. That might be a good way too. But I've been asked that before, and that certainly is a concern. So it's almost, you put it in, get it going, and then see. But I think if I remember correctly, those bits and pieces are going to go to the bottom and then so you might have to clean up the bottom of the barrel. I don't know about any chemical leaching or anything like that would go on with that water. If we're concerned about putting that water onto our tomato plants, that's where you'd want to dig a little bit further. But certainly putting it into a barrel and using it in our garden is better than all that stuff going then into runoff and then into our local ponds, rivers, and streams anyway. So that's a really good question. That's sort of the best answer I can provide. I would Google a little bit more, because I of course was asked that before and kind of fumbled through an answer and was like, I'm going to look that up later, and of course I completely forgot until now. So.
I find I have two rain barrels, and I
great.
find that the nozzle on the bottom isn't far enough.
Isn't far enough down.
And
Okay.
you have to build something to bring them up more, so that if I ever connect it to a solar hose,
Okay. Yeah.
so I'll have to do some adjusting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do like the fact that it's safe water.
Oh, and
rather than-
yeah. And there's our website. I can't remember if it's coming up on this. Our website has a calculator that you can calculate how much an area of a surface, how much water that will average equate to. So like, for example, if your roof is 20 by 100 or whatever, there's a calculation that, if I divert that into a rain barrel or into a rain garden, that's actually putting X amount of gallons back into the earth, or saving that much from then running off and shedding all that pollution and going into our local stream. So there's actually sort of a math equation to figure out how much water we are saving with a certain amount of area that we are capturing that runoff from. So that's very cool that you have that. And yeah, this picture, I feel like this one's oddly high. I feel like the ones that I've seen, the spigot is a little bit lower, but of course you can always sort of drill, or that sounds like a lot of extra work. But yeah, milk crates are great. The one at the office is on a milk crate, and so, a couple of them, like bungee corded too. But yeah, and so, but you can kind of configure them, and I feel like the latest ones that I've seen, the spigot's hopefully a little bit lower than the one pictured here.
What about in the winter time? Do you have to drain it, or does it freeze and then?
In the wintertime, that's actually a good question. I would probably drain it. Yeah, they're really strong though. It's you.
No, I drain mine like 2/3.
2/3. Okay.
Because you don't have to worry. Oh, but I disconnect it.
You disconnect it. Yeah. I would probably be more worried about your lines, your hoses and things. Yeah, and so, but they're like really strong. I've never heard of a situation. It's like, make sure to drain it. It's probably a good practice anyway. So that way you get real fresh sort of spring water. So that's a good question. Yep.
I use it to wash my hands.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. Yep. All right. So, look at that. That's an advertisement for this event that you are here right now. Make sure to go. It's really good. So, all right. Native landscapes can be beautiful. And so going online, researching native species that belong to your area. Local garden clubs will know about this too. Our website, and I think actually at the end of the presentation, I've got a whole list of alternatives to our non-native species. So it can really be beautiful. And again, the amount of water that you're saving by not having to water the drought-tolerant species or species that have been adapted to growing in our local habitat is also saving water. So these are all several really good little steps to do, because it's not all about like us all making big changes and just not want all bulldozing all the lawns or anything like that. No, it's all about just little things that we do every day. Maybe we have a little 4x4 rain garden that we built with our family. Maybe we'll get a rain barrel. Maybe we won't take 45-minute showers every other day. Things like, just like little steps that we can do that actually adds up to really, really big change. So, it can be really hard, For example, my director, she is trying to get more green infrastructure at home. She may not want me to be saying that, but she has a family member that's kind of resistant to it. So it can be hard to do these things, but if you can make it sort of a family thing or engaging, just raising awareness, getting good fact-based information, there can be ways to help others understand who may not have that sort of understanding or may not agree. So yeah.
One tip is to, during the drought, just put a bucket of water while you take a shower. You wouldn't be surprised how much water.
How much water? Yeah.
Just throw, it's
Yeah.
soap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Non it.
Yeah.
Non it.
Yeah. It's interesting. During the last presentation, someone asked a way to keep deer out of the garden. I've heard that Irish Spring soap, the smell of that, keeps them out. But of course, then you got the soap chemicals going into it. I don't know if it's like a natural chemical, but that's the only thing that I remember hearing about how to keep deer, other than a fencing or things like that. But when we move and encroach into wildlife habitat, they're going to encroach into ours. So there's a whole nother battle going on there with that question. All right. Pervious surfaces that you can put in your patio or on your driveway, areas that are tiled, have little gaps and spaces in between, kind of like this. This might be able to work actually. I see they have a drain here, but but areas where water can soak into. A really good one to see at a public place. It's in Pembroke, Hobbamock Pond, Oldham Pond, near Hobbamock. Oldham Pond in Pembroke at the public boat launch. There's a little public beach right there. At the public boat launch where the boats are pulling in and out, the ramp, obviously the boat ramp goes down into the pond. The pond has had struggles with blue-green algae. You can't swim because it's toxic because of all the fertilizers that are going into the lake. It fuels the algal bloom and it becomes a problem and dangerous, safety issue, a health issue. They put a little strip of just 2 foot by 30 foot, the length of the boat ramp, right before the runoff goes into the water, and it captures that and sends it into the ground before it goes into the lake. Just a little strip of pervious surface that the town did. So you can go there. We'll take the Pembroke students on a field trip there and pour a bucket of water right after that and watch it flow into the pond or above it, and then watch it hit that pervious surface and go right on in. So it's pretty cool. So little things like that. Again, you can go online and to our website or just Google pervious pavers, pervious patio surfaces, things like that. And it makes a big difference. It really does. So just again, returning that water that has run across the surface and collected all that bad stuff with it, putting it back into the ground is good. And of course, if you heard the last presentation, Lisi's, she really talked a lot about native pollinated species, things like that. So native species have adapted to our environment. They require less water and care, and species depend on them for food and shelter and habitat and things like that. So our native pollinators, our birds, our wildlife, are all adapted and need that dependency with a lot of our native species. Again, things that are non-native, our local wildlife may not know what to do with it. It might not provide benefit. It might be invasive, and it might be out-competing our native stuff. So anytime that we can promote native species here, it is just a big win for the environment, for us, and the habitat of all of our species. So my organization was founded on the loss of habitat for the salt marsh sparrow. One woman was out on Third Cliff and one spring back in 1969 and didn't hear the salt marsh sparrow and was like, well, why? And now we are where we are today. And so it's just trying to return and stop and all the rampant development that was going on back then along our river. So just one woman and then now the North River Protective Order. Now the North River is beautiful and has the protection along there. So it's just really, anyone can make big difference. So, all right. Oh yeah, native shrubs, witch hazel. I'll go through because I think I'm over time here. Airwood, summersweet, winterberry. I mean, come on, beautiful, right? Especially this time of year still. If the enjoy the berries before the cedar waxwings start to migrate back up. Again, this is all on our website with even more. Native ground covers, bearberry, dog hobble. I think swamp dog hobble will work too. Yeah, that gets a little bit taller though. Low bush blueberry, so like yes, burning bush is pretty, and all that. But really, blueberry, low and high bush, get a beautiful red color in the fall. And the blueberries you can go pick. And you can watch the birds in there. So really, native versus non-native once again. Native trees, obviously, white pine, American holly. Again, the female American hollies are going to have the red berries. And during spring migration of a lot of our migratory songbirds, like the cedar waxwings start to come up, they're going to start to munch on the berries of the hollies that have been sitting all winter long. And of course, what happens to berries and fruits when it sits all winter long? It starts to ferment.
And is that why they sing so?
Yes, that's what they sing among flying to our windows and things like that. Yeah, red maple, yeah, witch hazel. Go and find witch hazel right now. It's got the little like winter little, I want to say florets. Like it's really pretty. Birch, river birch, shad bush. Yeah, all good trees here. The white pine, obviously. Growing native, Situate. We did a program this past spring, and we're going to do it again this year. Grow native Situate, thanks to the Situate Education Foundation. And we were able to send home. We worked with Blue Stem Native in Norwell and picked up a bunch of little seedlings that the students were able to take home and observe any pollinators. They grow these at home, observe any pollinator species that visited their plants as they were growing. Milkweed. A type of goldenrod, foxglove. I can't remember. They all got 4 different species of native stuff. Yeah, rain garden stuff, drainage, anything coming off the roof, anything coming off the driveway, and yeah, it's kind of hard to see. So, just reducing imperviousness. Again, capturing water and putting it back to the earth. So, and water smart pledge. Let's put these all up here. All right, water my lawn at dawn, if at all. Water only when necessary, as determined by the walk test, and only if a watering ban is not in effect. Some towns do. Mow with a sharp mower blade. Leave grass clippings on lawn for free fertilizer. In the fall, we rake up all those leaves and send it to a dump, but that's your fertilizer that you just took away. So leave the leaves. Those leaves provide critical habitat for our pollinated species. Insects, the big one is fireflies. Need those fall leaves to lay their eggs in for spring and for summer. Leave the leaves. They belong there. That's what's supposed to happen. It provides good soil, provides good fertilizer. So we spend all that time and all that money leaf blowing with those gas machines, all those leaves up that all fall. That's all you hear. But then in the spring, now we're dumping all that fertilizer because that's what the leaves are supposed to be for. So, all right. Keep my grass at least 3 inches tall to crowd out the weeds so we don't have to do more to get the unwanted weeds out. Use organic products on my lawn. You can go online and find they'll tell you the good stuff to use. And learn more about having a healthy yard that protects our water by checking out watersmartsouthshore.org or NSRWA.org. So again, just head to our website. You'll find this and way more. This presentation was mostly compiled by Samantha, our director, and Dr. Sarah Grady, our watershed ecologist, who are incredibly well of knowledge. I'm the educator, so they teach me, and then I just regurgitate to everybody else. So I learn from the real experts. So, of course, saving water is always good. Reduce water bills, less money spent on chemicals, less exposure to chemicals. We've been learning more and more about that. Increase property values because we've got beautiful native landscapes with healthy wildlife. More beautiful landscapes, I just said. More habitat, I just said that too. More habitat for wildlife and reduced stormwater pollution, which is our #1 cause of water pollution here in the South Shore, yeah.
And a lot of times there's a minimum amount for a water bill.
Yeah.
I use a 1/7 the amount of minimum.
Okay.
But I still have to pay
That's interesting. Is that other people? Is that a similar scenario? I've never heard that before.
That's in Hanson. It's a $75 minimum payment 4 times a year. And if
Interesting.
that were not true, people might be more interested in
That's interesting.
reducing their water use.
That's interesting. Well, I happen to know a high quality, great person who is on your conservation commission that I would like to actually hear more information about that because I've never heard that before. I wonder if that's going on in other towns.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Well, yes, the monetary value may be a point of contention and it may be a way of helping others, but also the fact that you are like a seventh of that is really cool. So you may have to spend that extra money that you're not using, but you're doing such good for the environment by saving that water. So, but that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. Yeah. How much water do you use? Total gallons consumed, things like that. This is on our website, so you can take your water bill. Speaking of water bills, total gallons consumed divided by days in the billing cycle divided by how many people in the house, and you can see your average gallon per person per day. So the state of Massachusetts recommends how much gallons? 65. Yeah, I forgot that it's up there. Yeah, state of Massachusetts recommends 65 gallons per person per day. Sounds like a lot. 65 gallons of water per person. It's like, oh, that's a lot of water. Well, it goes really quickly. Yep. So, all right. Well, water is life. We need it. It's just incredibly important. All right. I think, yeah. We're right over here, right? That's the Situate Reservoir. Oh no, we're a little bit further down. That is 3A though. So pledging to save water is great. We did this pledge campaign a while back. So, all right. Yeah. This is by North Reservation in Norwell. The boathouse out there during low tide, it's hard to see. Yeah, there's a rock during low tide, and notoriously spring and fall, you'll see the seal out there. So, a lot of this water saving stuff may not mean, but when it affects big macro fauna like our seals, our bald eagles, that's a lot of people then will sort of get raise awareness that way too. So, all right, it should be. Yeah, okay, thank you for your time, cool. So yeah, I really appreciate you being here and listening to me go through all this stuff. So thank you, and good questions too, and good points that you all brought up. So, but thanks so much for being here, and really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.